Hey everyone, George Christie here with Wine Industry Network. Welcome to another edition of the Bold Predictions webinar series. We've got a really good one for you today. It's titled, How to Navigate Career Transitions Within the Wine Industry. And what I like about this is that despite the fact that, as an industry, we're facing headwinds, we're going to continue to face headwinds for some time, I'm afraid, but that doesn't mean there aren't opportunities out there or advancement for wine industry professionals. And this session is going to touch on all of that and more. Just as a quick reminder, we always pre-record these sessions a week or so in advance. We do that for quality purposes. But the good news is that all of our presenters and panelists are going to be watching the broadcast right along with you. So as questions come to you, go ahead and submit those into the chat room, and our presenters will pick those questions off as they come in. So please take advantage of that. We want this to be as interactive as possible. Last but certainly not least, we're able to offer these webinars for free because of the support that we get from the wine industry members that we work with. So our presenting sponsors are Moss Adams and Baker Tilly, and our series supporting sponsors are Mitroff Consulting, Protea Financial Wine Accountants, and wineindustrycareers.com. It's a new job board that we launched last year. It's really focused on helping people who are looking to not just get a job in the wine industry, but build a career in the industry. So anyway, I want to thank everyone for being with us today. I hope you enjoy the webinar. I'm going to hand it off to Lauren Heindel, who's the community manager for Innovent, and Lauren will handle introducing her panel. Lauren, why don't you take it away?
There are places ambition alone can't take you. For those, you need a partner, one who feels it in their bones, just like you do, gets what moves you inside and out, and together delivers you to that place you've been working towards all along. When you're taking on the impossible, meet the pros at making possible happen.
Thanks, George. Hi, everyone, and welcome to Bold Predictions. I'm Lauren Heindel, the Community Manager at Innovent, and I'm thrilled to be your moderator for this inspiring session on career transitions within the wine industry. According to reports from Wine Business Monthly and Wine Analytics data, the wine industry hiring is slowing down in some areas, particularly in production and direct-to-consumer roles. But sales and marketing positions are seeing increased demand, which is why this is such an important topic to discuss today. Today, our panel brings together industry leaders who have really navigated incredible shifts from production to finance, from family-run wineries to mergers and acquisitions, and from winemaking to supporting wineries with purpose-built software. Whether you're just getting started in your career or you're thinking about what's next, or you're trying to figure out, where am I going? Our goal today is to spark ideas, to share stories, and to really leave you feeling more inspired to forge ahead, no matter what direction that might be. So today, our agenda includes an overview of the speakers, taking a deep dive into each unique career journey, going over some general career reflections and highlighting the self-doubt that comes up with this, the burnout, and kind of how to balance it all, and then ending with a few takeaways. All right, let's start with meeting our speakers. So, panelists, please share your name, your role, and give us a quick snapshot of the key turning point in your career from where you started and where you are now. Let's start with you, Ashley.
Sure, thanks, Lauren. My name is Ashley Dubois-Leonard. I'm the founder and CEO of Innovent. For those of you that don't know Innovent, Innovent is a technology company that delivers software and education to the wine industry to help wineries run better businesses. Specifically, our product manages vineyard data, production workflows, cost accounting, case goods inventory, and TTB compliance. So think of us as your back of house operating system. My background, I started in the wine industry almost 20 years ago now. Out of high school, I got my undergrad degree in viticulture and enology from UC Davis. I wanted to be a winemaker. I was very intrigued by the intersection of science and artistry, and it seemed like it was a great fit for my personality and my interests. So I started at 19 years old, and I was doing a bunch of harvest internships, lugging hoses around, and did that for a couple years, and then got an amazing opportunity out of college, actually, through a mentor of mine, a winemaking mentor, to launch a new wine brand, a new premium wine brand for them. So at 22 years old, I was thrown into the wine business world and had to learn about a winery P&L and had to work with the vineyard manager on his practices and work with the consulting winemaker in the custom crush facility. I had to open the hospitality department and launch the business plan and go and market with brokers. So I got a lot of exposure very early to what it takes to run a good wine business, or maybe at times not a great wine business. And I did that for a couple years and then jumped to another winery and did that for another winery, another newer brand. And then I found myself about a decade into winemaking and winery management, desiring something different. And that's when I made a left turn into Silicon Valley and I went into technology. And I can talk a little bit about what that transition was like later, but I worked for about 2.5 years for an IT infrastructure consulting firm, of all things. So not at all wine related, but I was able to apply my experience in sales and marketing and events to that role. And that's what exposed me to what great software was doing in other industries. And 2 years into that role, I had that epiphany moment of, wouldn't it be great if someone that came from winemaking and winery operations built great software for winemakers and production in this industry? So that was 11 years ago. That's my background.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing, Ashley. And now can we hear from you, Taylor?
Yes. Hi. Thank you, Lauren, and thank you for having me today. My name is Taylor Rabora, and I'm currently working as the Client Services Manager at Northwest Wine Accounting, which is an outsourced wine accounting firm specifically focusing on wineries in the Pacific Northwest. Prior to working here, I got my degree in wine and viticulture with a concentration in wine business, and that was from Cal Poly in San Luis Obispo. And after graduating from there, I spent 9 years working in winemaking predominantly, but also in tasting rooms as well as in vineyards across the US in Chicago, the Central Coast of California, and Oregon, where I currently live. I've also worked internationally in both South Africa and New Zealand, and so I've gotten some experience abroad as well. And in 2023, before I made this transition, I started my own wine brand. So I have a small business as well that I get to kind of do on the side with my full-time job. And so as I've made this transition, it's been a little bit easier for me because I still get to dip my toes in the winemaking pool and pour for people and meet people, which has been really nice. I initially made this career transition when I felt this need that I just wanted to serve the wine industry. And as a winemaker, it was something that I didn't feel like I was fulfilling. And as I've grown in this industry, I've just come to love the people, love the stories, love the culture, and I wanted to find a way to support them. And the more I learned and the more I thought about higher level positions within the industry and within wineries themselves, I saw that there was a need for more financial leaders and financial specialists. And so during my program at Cal Poly, I had always enjoyed my finance and accounting classes. Similar to winemaking, I love the meticulous quality of accounting and how clean and organized the information can be. And so when I was looking for this position change, I had met the owner of Northwest Wine Accounting, Rachel, who had a semi-similar background to me, working on organic farms prior to starting her accounting firm. And it just felt like a good fit. So that's what led me here. I'm starting a master's program this upcoming fall, and we'll be doing a master's of science and finance here in Portland as well.
Wonderful. That's awesome. We both went to Cal Poly, so Yes. Great. Well, let's hear from you now, Kristen.
Sure. Thank you. My name is Kristen Marchese, and I work at Metis, and we are an alcohol beverage focused M&A advisory firm. So we work with wineries and vineyards and kind of wine adjacent businesses of all sizes all over the country. And the the base of our work is helping people have successful exits, and that's what we love to do. And how I made this switch was I actually sold my family's winery. So I grew up on a winery, actually on the East Coast. And so that was the whole deal, getting off the bus stop, working in the vineyard, on the bottling line. I did that my entire life. And I never had any intention of doing it as a job. And I found myself living on the West Coast, and my dad bought a winery out here and asked me to come work for him. And I said no, because I like my dad a lot. But I ultimately, after a few months, acquiesced. And so my dad and I ran that business for 13 years together. And it was an amazing opportunity. It was, thrown into the deep end, but also having your mentor trust you and know you. And so we very luckily had complementary skill sets. But I realized, I think 11 years in or 10 years in, probably sooner, if I'm honest with myself, that I was never going to buy that business from my dad. And I had thought perhaps that was just because it was a brand that we purchased, that was a legacy brand, and I just wasn't as inspired by it. So after going through the process of selling our business without a company like Metis, which was a very spectacular learning curve, I decided that it was time for me to leave that business and do something for somebody else. So I had the privilege of starting a new brand and running a construction project, build an amazing winery, and restructure another brand. And I did that for a few years. And then I think I ultimately realized that running a winery was my dad's dream, but it wasn't mine, even though I had the aptitude for it. And so, when I thought about the work that I really loved to do, it was the business of wine. I love how wineries operate, and it's a really dynamic industry. And also being able to help people that were in my position, that knew that they needed to sell their winery or their business, and wanted smart people on their side. So I was lucky enough to work with Metis in the process as a buy-side client. And so when I left winery management, I was able to start here. And so that was about 4 years ago.
Awesome. So many great stories. And we just have a great panel today. I will give you a little bit about myself as well. I currently am the community manager over at Innovent with Ashley, and I do marketing there. But I did not start in marketing. I started way back doing harvest, working in production, in the vineyard, in the lab. I worked 5 harvests, one over in New Zealand, and the other 4 in the Napa Valley. Really fell in love with the winemaking process, the long hours, the amazing teams. And then I went to get my master's in business at Sonoma State to further my career in the wine industry, where I landed in marketing. And now I get to still serve the wine industry, but kind of on the other side here at Innovent. So also made a little career transition there, but I will be working through a few important questions with the rest of the team here as we dive deeper into some learnings that each panelist has had on their unique journey. So starting with you, Taylor, I'm curious to see, coming from production and seeing finance as a complete opposite world, what helped you feel confident making that leap? And what advice would you give to someone who's thinking about maybe moving across domains like that?
Yeah, so I think that finance would feel like a much different world if I was going into a broader role. If you think about the typical background of growth for somebody, you start with your broad topic. So maybe you go to school for accounting or finance, and you go and you work for a public firm, and then you find your niche, and then you dive deep into that niche, and that becomes your career. And in my sense, I had already been working in the wine industry for 9 years. And so when I was looking at making this transition, it didn't feel as far-fetched as it may seem from the outside. And I think that's because of the way that different parts of the industry can inform you. And so the way that working in the vineyard makes you understand winemaking, and how working in winemaking helps you understand how to sell the wine. And, it moves in every direction. And so when it came to transitioning to finance, again, there were aspects from my degree in college that I was really interested in. But the idea of moving into a role where I was familiar with a lot of the nuances of the local industry. I'm currently living in the Willamette Valley, and when we're working with clients who are using Willamette Valley vendors, for example, or just common vendors around the Pacific Northwest, I think that it provides a lot of value to the clients as well as the firm when I can speak based off of experience. And I know people that are currently using them, or, opinions about different things that are going on. And so, in that sense, if I was giving advice to somebody, I would say don't undervalue the way that your path has gotten you to where you are. And that's because if you were doing just finance or doing accounting and you hadn't worked in the wine industry before, you may not be able to advise from real life experience. And this isn't advice of just the way things are done, but this is also the way things shouldn't be done, right? We all make mistakes, or we think that something's a great idea and then we go and do it and then it doesn't work out. And so to be able to speak from both sides of that, I think it provides a lot of value. As for what I had to unlearn, I would say the boundaries that you don't have when it comes to winemaking. Often winemaking becomes your identity. It's your days, your weekends, everything feels personal to you, and it's hard to separate yourself from your work. And it really becomes your hobby and your job and your lifestyle and everything else. And so within doing this transition to wine accounting, I think that I've had to teach myself to essentially be able to not completely associate my life with my job, and have a little bit more work-life balance, which is something that I was really looking for when I made this transition.
That's great. Yeah, I can definitely relate to that. Unlearning the constantly on the clock, but awesome. Moving to you, Ashley. You started in winemaking as well, and now you lead a tech company that supports wineries in every region. So, what helped you kind of shift from being a winemaker to being a tech entrepreneur?
Yeah, so great question. To be clear, one day I did not say I'm done being a winemaker, and the next day, all of a sudden, I was running a software company. There was a huge transition there in the middle of that, with a lot of doubt and insecurity, and re-identifying myself and what I really want out of my life, my professional life. So to be transparent, like Taylor said, I think especially in winemaking, there's a tremendous amount of pride that winemakers have in building up your experience to a certain level. And I think it was very sad for me to kind of admit that, at least at that time, I was going to abandon that experience. Because again, I went from wine to tech for 2 years and then wine tech to start Innovent. So that was definitely a shift of like, okay, I think I don't see a clear path right now to keep applying my winemaking and winery operations experience. Like, hard stop. Now let's find a way to go into tech. And that's where you kind of have to reinvent and say, okay, I'm actually pretty good at some other things. I'm pretty good at, to Taylor's point, like being really organized and really disciplined. I love to challenge myself. Like, what else can I do to add value? And I transferred that into the tech industry with the relationships that I have. Again, networking is everything. Highly encourage everyone listening to talk to folks that you respect and admire in a role that you may want to go to someday. So I did a lot of that. And then what helped me shift to wine tech is just having this epiphany, this like symbol clashing of, oh my gosh, I think I can marry what I've been learning in software to what I was doing in winemaking. And it was just this like beautiful opportunity that presented itself. And then how do you stay connected to the production side? Really easily, honestly. I mean, we have thousands of winemakers using our software, and I'm still very much engaged on a daily basis with our customers. I mean, we had a call this morning on like deep diving costing methodologies, and like there's just so much education that we still bring to winemakers, the production side, to the growing side as well, that keeps my hands in it.
Nice. Very much so. I can attest to that. We're constantly working alongside winemakers and making sure they are top of mind with everything that we do here. So great. Well, moving to you now, Kristen. You've led a family winery, like you mentioned, and now you help others navigate mergers and acquisitions. What was it like stepping out of a deeply personal, legacy-driven role into more of a strategic advisory role?
Yeah, I mean, I think, and Ashley mentioned this, like sort of, I mean, you didn't get these words exactly. At first, I kind of felt like, oh my gosh, did I fail doing what I was doing? Like, was the reason I want to do this because I wasn't good enough? And so there was certainly a period of time where I really had to kind of get right with myself. And then realize that my legacy in winery management had come to a close ultimately. So I had touched the people that I had touched, and I had created the things that I created, and I knew how important that was to me, but it had ended. It was over. And so in the role that I am now, it is, I feel like part of it is just honoring the work that people have done, because people put everything they have into these businesses, and it's meaningful to them. It was for some people their entire career. So really spending time honoring that, and whatever that looks like. Sometimes it's just like, wow, your company is worth so much money, but sometimes it's also just like, this is a really special wine. You pulled out this amazing thing from the library, and wow, look at how this is done. And so I think, knowing all of the small things that you do every day and how they add up to something really big, and being able to identify those small things for people, and it having to be very genuine on my side, that feels good. And I feel like I feel like I can see, like I see them, I see what they're going through. And also, when you're in a transaction, it's quite stressful. And, as we say, every transaction dies at some point. It's just, how are you going to revive it? And I remember, gosh, I wish we'd hired a company like Metis, but I remember going through that and not knowing these lessons and not having anybody to say, like, this is okay, this is normal. Now you just got to fix it. And so I like that I'm in that position where I can say, oh yeah, here we are. This seems like a left-hand turn, but we are right on track. Keep going. And this is going to be fine. And here, maybe you should start thinking about this now, because it is, when you sell your business that you have put everything into, it's a little bit of a debt. Ultimately, there's some real grief. Even if you continue to stay involved, it's not the same. And so also kind of preparing people for what that's like, because I think people are so eager. By the time they decide that they want to sell, they're ready, they're done. And I don't know if people can always, and if you've never done it before, you wouldn't be able to predict what that feels like on the other end. So I try to share a little bit of what I've known or what I learned, but also just to honor their hard work, because it's a lot of work to run a winery, as we all know.
Yeah, you definitely answered the second question there too, and how you are thinking about legacy and how you're honoring legacy in the work that you do now. So that's great. I'd love to move into more of a group discussion where we talk through some general career reflections. So, my first question to the group is when you think back, and Ashley kind of answered this already, so I want to open it up to you both, Taylor and Kristen. When you think back to your pivotal career transition, what was the moment or some insight that helped you take this leap?
Yeah, so I'll start us off. But I think just back to that insight of serving the industry. And it was something that I always felt in a sense of I want to be a steward of the land, or I want to help people in the industry, or I want to do something where there is a greater goal than just to make myself happy, essentially. Um, I definitely am the type, I'm a people person, I like to make other people happy. And I know that for a lot of winemakers, you're often really good at making wine, but you don't often know the business side. And I think that that's a bridge that really needs to be gapped. And with more education and more webinars, and I know that you guys do this for Innovent when you guys do your expert talks, but bringing in people who can discuss bridging those gaps and making it more understandable to every single person in each aspect of the business. There's no reason that the winemaker shouldn't be able to read a P&L. And there's no reason that your CFO shouldn't know how you made your rosé or, any of those type of situations. And as I thought more and more and I looked around at my peers, it was something that I felt like I could be good at. It's something that I wanted to help others do, essentially. So I think that it's something that was always in me, essentially, but it just finally came out about a year and a half ago when I decided to make this transition.
I would say, well, my moment or insight was really, frankly, deeply personal. My best friend was dying of cancer, and so I was kind of juggling running the winery and going down out of state to help her. And I was confronted with the fact that life is short. And I realized that this wasn't bringing me the joy that it had been. And I didn't feel like I was learning as much. And I felt like, the things that had once been so fun, like all the traveling and all the sales trips were now feeling like a chore. And that just the realization that this is it. I got one life. Let me do something that I want to have fun and continue to learn. So that really like pushed me to make some big changes. But the other part was really giving myself a chance to think about what it was that I loved about my job. Because before, when you're in it, you're just in it. And sometimes it's really hard to step back and think, what are the things that I found? What was the project that I loved to do? I cannot believe my truth is that I loved to build that 5-year budget. Like it was so fun. It's so dorky. But that was ultimately the thing I had the most fun with because we really got into the weeds and just try to get it right. And so I think it was both just being confronted with, here I am, is this what I want to be doing with my life? And also taking the time to decide and really think about what it was that I found fulfilling in that work that helped me figure out what the next step was.
I love
That's
that you
great.
both said that. I love that we're all aligned on, like earlier, Kristen, you said that there's a great need to help wineries go through an M&A process and that it can be really emotionally draining and stressful. And so and you as well, Taylor, said that, finance can be really stressful for winemakers. So I think it's the combination of like that need, and that was my epiphany moment, was like, oh my gosh, there's a need for this thing that I would love to do. Like this would be so much fun for me and what I enjoy and what I've enjoyed in my past experiences to bring something like Innovent to market. So yeah, for those listening, I encourage you to think through where the need is and what you love. I think those go hand in hand together.
Yeah, that's a perfect segue into our next question. And feel free to just build upon what you've already shared, thinking through how you identified what skills you could carry with you to that new thing or to that new path. There might be some people listening right now who are like, okay, I'm in a assistant winemaker role, but I am really interested in finance. So, how did you identify those skills to then make that switch or like make your resume um, desirable for a new role?
I think it's like, I don't think you can overstate how, even if you're doing something and then you do something completely different, how there are always lessons to take with you, and particularly within the wine industry, because everything is connected. And I think it's actually surprising. Sometimes you'll be doing a thing and you'll think, oh, I was kind of working with a client the other day and had to quickly decide in my head, okay, what size facility do they need? And I haven't had to think about building a winery in 5 or 6 years, but I immediately can go back and think about square footage and needs and quickly do a quick cost estimation in my head so that I can model correctly for them. I mean, I think, you know, everything we carry with us is useful. And you just never really know when something will come in handy.
I agree with that. I think that there are a lot of aspects that don't necessarily have to do with the specific role that you're in or the role that you want to be in, but more so just about the person that you are. Do you value teamwork? And do you think about the bigger picture of who else is involved? Who else is going to look at this? How do I make this as easy as possible for them to understand? How do I keep a good track record of what I've been doing? In a winery, you may be seeing somebody that's filling a barrel and they don't have a bung. And so you go and you get the bung for them. It's like those small little things that you can do to just make somebody's life easier. I think that is something that is transferable across all industries. I think other qualities are working with a sense of urgency or an attention to detail and just kind of more general ethics that you have, I would say. And again, to what Kristen was saying, to not undervalue your experience and what else you've learned, because often there are ideas that come from different industries that you may not have thought of because you're pigeonholed in one. That as soon as you hear it from somebody doing something else, you're like, why have we not done this yet?
That's so true and so well said. I don't know what else to add to that other than uh, complimenting it by saying that, yeah, your experience can sort of sneak up on you. At the time, something may seem irrelevant and unnecessary. And then a couple years later, you're like, oh my gosh, I did see that at one point. I did do that at one point. And I actually really liked that. Like the P&L, comment that you made earlier, Taylor, where as a winemaker, like, yeah, you should know your way around a profit and loss statement. Like that would be really valuable, actually. And it's something that inspires me to work with winemakers on building up their business value to a winery. Like why should a winemaker get paid top dollar? You should know the answer to that.
Totally. And I think another thing that Innovent does that's amazing that hasn't been as easy for winemakers to see before is the wine costing, right? And being able to put your cost of goods into the same software that you're keeping track of your dry goods and your barrels and your cased goods. And I think that the more that we offer different softwares or different systems where we continue to blur the lines, it just makes it easier and easier for people to make these transitions.
It also helps, like, as from a company perspective, like keeping people from being so siloed, because when their work isn't so hidden, or I think it helps with communication, and from like the general manager perspective, people are more accountable for the work that they do, and ultimately like know their business better.
Hugely agree. And just look at the three of us. We work together, finance, M&A, and production. And there is a ton of synergy there and a ton of value that we bring together mutually as a team to help wineries wrap their head around how to run a better business. And it does start with breaking down the silos.
Yeah.
Finance, winemaking, compliance, legal, procurement, vineyard, ag, all that.
Great. Amazing stuff. Now I want to lean into what support systems or mentors you all had that helped you most during this transition.
I'll go. Well, I have to give a nod to my boss, Eric. I mean, he was really great with me, and kind of identifying that had an aptitude and would be good for this work, and then also kind of working with me because you don't know what you know, you don't know what you don't know, and so really helping build my confidence to realize that I actually knew far more than I realized, and I had my arms wrapped around the process, even though I was worried maybe I didn't. And so I think obviously like landing in the right company that is going to support you on that journey, that realizes you're coming from something very different, and helping you find your way in that culture, or that the cadence of that now new work is pretty key. And then, I had so many amazing, friends that just kind of always checked in on me, made sure I was doing okay, understood that I could never talk about my work ever again. Used to, when you run wineries, you can call and lament, and now I don't talk to people about it very much. But ultimately, I think it was landing in the right place that could help me make that transition for me.
I could not agree more with Kristen. Where I currently work, Northwest Wine Accounting, I have just been so lucky to have a great boss, and also just have a manager who is willing to invest in me and take the time to teach me, and also be interested in learning from me. She has a traditional accounting background. She's a CPA. She knows so much about accounting, but she's also curious to learn about winemaking and learn about the things that she doesn't know. And so it feels more like a conversation than it does necessarily then just being taught to, which, gives me a little bit more responsibility and confidence in my experience. She is also really good about just being the type of person where no question is too big or too small. She gives me autonomy where I'm able to, try things where maybe I'm not ready quite yet. And if I make a mistake, then I don't lose that responsibility, but she explains why it was a mistake and how I can learn from it. And so I think having people and mentors like that in your life, and especially being in a workplace where they're willing to do that for you, is a really great support system to have.
For me and my experience, it's very entrepreneurial, starting a new company. So if anyone out there wants to start a company, please reach out to me. I can talk for hours on that. But I think for the context of this call, I will agree with them about getting mentors and advisors to help you understand what you're getting into. For me, starting an event, I understood half of the pie really well, like winemaking and wine business. I didn't understand the other half at all, which is starting a software company and writing code and scaling that. I had no idea. So I got a lot of advisors on that side of tech advisors, software advisors, and then also had winemaking advisors. Am I building the right thing? So yeah, huge proponent of filling your knowledge gaps as you're entering into a new space, and making sure that you're surrounded with support from other people that have done the job.
Yeah, that's great. It's great to hear your 3 different experiences with mentorship, and how really it comes down to building your own mini community, right? Who can help you grow and help guide you and kind of reinforce you when you may be feeling down or doubting yourself. And that's a great segue into our next segment, I guess you could call it. Real talk, self-doubt, burnout, and kind of how to balance it all. Career transitions, they aren't always glamorous, right? Sometimes they're clunky or just not so clear. And these three things kind of sink or sneak up on us, whether we like them to or not. And there's no right time or right way to maybe deal with it. So I'd love to hear from you three how you managed kind of that self-talk, that self-doubt, and maybe imposter syndrome. So, first question to the group: was there a time that you questioned whether you made the right move? And I know some of you have kind of touched on this already, but I'd love to hear any new insights on this.
I'll go first on this one. Yeah, absolutely. I think if you're pushing the envelope, bringing technology to an industry that are full of traditionalists, you're going to be up against a lot of resistance early on. And I have, a quote book of things that I were told early on around like, you're crazy to think that a winemaker is going to let their staff bring technology into the cellar, and things like that. You have to get really comfortable with opposition. But I think that's part of the entrepreneurial spirit and drive, is that you have a vision and you're, pushing for it and you push through all that. So, those of you looking for a new opportunity, you will be met with resistance, and those that will think perhaps it's not the right career move for you, and they'll tell you why. And, you have to build up that resilience and know that at least it's worth the experiment. That's the right mindset. At least it's worth the experiment.
I'll go. Gosh, I'm not sure whether I mean, I'm sure there've been over the past 4 years, I'm like, oh, I'm terrible. This is terrible. What am I doing? Because we all do that, right? Like we had a tough day and sky's falling. But I think I was just so excited to be doing something new after, 15, 16 years doing the same thing, that I just felt like, well, if this isn't it, if this isn't going to stick, I am on the right path. I remember my sister telling me when I first went to college, she was like, oh, it's not going to be the people that you meet initially that are going to be your friends. It's going to be their friends and their friends' friends. And so, along this path, I just kind of told myself, well, if I don't end up loving this work, this is like my first friend that I met in college, and maybe the next I'll meet a friend's friend, and that will be the next thing. But I happen to enjoy this quite a bit. But I just kind of realized and trusted myself that I needed to do something different. So there was no turning back. I wasn't going to do that. It was onwards from the first step out. And yeah, onwards.
Awesome.
I feel like I can semi-relate to that, Kristen, where I do look ahead and I know I'm on the right path, but I love to dabble. And I'm grateful that I can continue making wine and pouring friends' wines and doing that on the side. But on my day-to-day, the work-life balance that this has brought to me, and just the relief that I have where I work my 40-hour week and I work hard and I feel fulfilled. And then I get off of work and I go for a run, or I go hang out with my dog, or I go for a hike or do something where I may have not had the energy to do that after a day of bottling or pruning or other work in the winery. I just feel very fulfilled by that. And it's not that that work before wasn't fulfilled. And like Kristen and Ashley were saying, I definitely had that kind of feeling of like, did I not have the energy to be a winemaker? Why didn't I have this in me? But I don't think it's necessarily not having it in you, but it's just wanting different things as you get older. And I think that's just kind of a natural path that you go down, and having different priorities, and different jobs offer different balances in your life. And you just have to ask yourself what those are.
Yeah. Yeah. That's very true. And that energy of like giving yourself to something and then having to kind of give it up and grieve is tough. But knowing, or the common theme that I'm hearing here is not doing it is almost worse than wishing you've done it or Did I say that right? Yeah, not doing it is worse than doing it and failing. That's what I'm trying to say. Because it's either a good experiment or it's putting you in a new direction and it's getting you closer to the path that will be more fulfilling in the end. So, next question I have for the group is how do you balance your personal and your professional demands?
I think Taylor just answered that for herself.
Yes, that's true.
uh, this is hard. It's hard as a business owner myself. It's hard as a woman and a mother. And I think it's something that we'll continue to battle and be challenged with. To Taylor's point, as a winemaker, there are a lot of demands on you. And I'll say at Innovent, we employ a lot of winemakers that have sort of burnt out on that. And I have mixed feelings about it because they're incredible professionals that have contributed so much to Innovent, but they're also incredible winemakers. And the fact that they burn out enough to decide to leave the profession is really tough for the profession because we need them there. We need great winemakers too. So I think, again, that balance is really important. I actually think COVID has brought a lot of great aspects to winery cultures where they sort of learn that, hey, perhaps not everyone needs to be, in the winery 10 hours a day, every day. Maybe it makes sense for a couple folks to work from home a couple times a week and that, maybe they're even more productive working from home a couple days a week. So there are things that, as an employer, I'm very conscious of doing and showcasing, within my personal life to our employees. But making sure that you can go for runs after work and pick up your kids from school and travel with your children, right, are really important part of making sure you have that work-life balance.
Yeah, I also think just communication with your organization too. So, we are really clear. It's on my calendar, carpool, the days I have to drive carpool or, whatever that is. And And I think to your point, Ashley, before COVID, I didn't even really talk about having kids because I just didn't want anyone to see them as a distraction. People were actually surprised, except even though I went to meetings pregnant and took my kids to work for 6 months, still some people didn't realize. But now I just try to be very clear about it. This is what I'm doing and I'm just not available for 40 minutes, but I'll be back and I'm gonna finish my work and I don't know if it's even a balance, I just think you sort of, some days you have to go to one side and the other days you got to do the other thing, So it feels like a dance, but communication and a supportive culture. I mean, if you don't work somewhere where they realize that you have a life outside of your work, that's a challenge. But but being able just to be upfront and clear with the people that you work with without shame and knowing that the flip side of that is that you have to do what you say you're going to do and you have to fulfill your responsibilities. I think that's at this point kind of the best that we can hope for.
Yeah, that's lovely. Well, I would like to end with some encouragement and some action steps we could leave folks listening with today. So, what's one piece of advice you would give someone who may be feeling stuck or unsure about their next career move? And again, I know you've all peppered these these advice nuggets into your answers already, but if you could think of one thing top of mind somebody can walk away with today, what would you offer them?
I would say, actually, you talked about this earlier, how important networking is. And of course, that's key to things. And I've made this mistakes and I've recently had an experience and I thought, oh, wow, I wish I'd known this. And so I'm going to share what I realized, which was, when you're networking, network with purpose, know what you're going in there to find out. And don't expect somebody to have an aha moment for you when you're feeling lost or in the weeds or, with this transition. Go with purpose and really, I'm meeting with you because you do X and I want X. and not like, but I'll do Y and W. I think you'll get more out of those meetings with people if you're really clear, and also you'll get more clear with yourself because you'll have kind of a definitive thought process around things. So, yeah.
I heard a quote that kind of goes in hand with that recently, Kristen, which is direction is more important than speed, which I think is very fitting to that.
Mhm.
But that's your advice, so that's not mine. My advice, I would say, is to just not underestimate yourself. I'm much younger in my career right now than Kristen and Ashley. They both have lots of experience compared to me. And I'm still on a point where a lot of my peers are jumping between winemaking roles or doing the same transitions out of winemaking and into wine sales or product sales or, different adjacent careers. And so often one of them will apply for a job and then they get it. And then the other friend says, "Oh my God, you got that job. I wanted to apply." And they're like, "Well, thank you for not, because you've worked 5 more harvests than me," or, you have an actual degree in wine and I don't. And often it's just people getting in their own way of not taking that jump or taking the risk of trying to apply when, it's not going to hurt you in the end. It may work out, and you never know what an employer's looking for when you're interviewing for a job. It may not be that they want all of the acronyms behind your name or the degree, but maybe they're looking for different attributes.
That's so great. Never underestimate yourself. I love it.
Mhm.
My one piece of advice is it's okay to not see that path today. I was pretty lost for a while. And I didn't see the path. It was not clear to me. I didn't know where I was going. Transitioning industries, abandoning experience is really hard at times to swallow. So just know that I really do believe in fate, or whatever you may call it. I do think that every day of experience in you networking or talking to people in other industries or talking to people within this industry that you're intrigued by for any reason is valuable, and it will take you to where you're meant to go.
That's great. I have one more question for you all. Building on top of that, if I were looking to start today, where would I find this community, or where would you recommend I start if I want to find the support to start making this change or start talking to these people?
Well, I think you have a good answer for this, Lauren.
I may, but
I mean, I've used Innovent for the punch down your community page where I've chatted with people and people post about jobs or different articles about the state of the industry. I also, just going back to the idea of networking that Kristen and Ashley were talking about, another resource that Innovent offered that I so greatly appreciated last summer was one of the webinars that you guys hosted, which you do consistently. And I'd recommend anyone to watch these whenever they're posted or the old recordings later on. But the operational health webinar that you guys did, where Ashley moderated with a few different industry leaders that all suggested, again, reaching out to somebody in the industry who you admire. And the advice was that you never know if they don't want to talk to you, and more likely than not, they're going to want to. The reason that I'm even sitting here today is because after that webinar, I emailed Ashley to say, "Hey, I think you're amazing and I'm inspired by you. Do you want to get a cup of coffee?" And the same thing, one of the CFO advisors who works with us at Northwest Wine Accounting, I said, "Hey, you inspire me. Can we sit down and talk?" And he said, "You know who you should meet with is Kristen." And so you just never know where these connections are going to go to. And if you're going to try to start leaning into the industry, I would always say reach out to someone that you're inspired by, and, everybody is interconnected in some way or another. And if they start to understand what you're looking for, then they can guide you in a similar path or whatever path you're hoping to kind of work with. So, yeah.
I'm going to give another example of that. I think LinkedIn is underutilized in this industry, and I've had the most incredible like cold exchanges via LinkedIn with owners. Like I'll see a write-up on a winery owner that is running an incredible culture, and I'll reach out to her and say, "Oh my gosh, I was so inspired by this. Like you're amazing." Like Taylor did with both of us, saying, "Can I sit down with you and understand how you're doing this?" It's my favorite conversations are from those exchanges. So go on LinkedIn, look up, I mean, you can search all sorts of things, right? Like a person or a title that interests you, or there's a ton of opportunity on there.
I think also there's organizations, and there some things don't exist after COVID that I would have been real quick to recommend. But I mean, there's in Oregon, there's the Women in Wine, which I think they have like an annual meeting or conference, and then they have sort of periodic events over the year. And I think that is, a nice place to connect with people who from all different parts of the industry there, because there are service providers and also winery people. And I think there's one in California, is it called Batonage? I don't know as much about that one, but I know you mentioned it before, Ashley. And so I do think there's like some communities in place that, if anything, you can just kind of go once or twice and talk to people and see what works for you and what feels right. So in person, whenever possible. Of course, that's, in my opinion, the best way to connect.
Yeah. And I'll give a shameless plug for the Punchdown, which is the digital community that Innovent's built that Lauren leads, which I love because it is really intended to be cross-regional. So at the end of my winemaking career, I was making wine in the Santa Cruz Mountains, which is a very small region and you're very isolated. And I wanted to ask Sonoma peanut producers about their winemaking practices and Willamette Valley producers about theirs. And I had no way of building community with other regions. So that's why this excites me and us so much, is that it really bridges that gap where you can ask any sort of question to anyone live in this online forum.
Yeah, and it's pretty active. Everyone kind of jumps in when you ask a technical question, and winemakers love to get technical. So we love to see the things that come out of that. And then also I will do another shameless plug on Expert Talks, which is our version of kind of Bold Predictions, I would say, where I sit down with wine industry folks where we talk through anything from wine compliance to bottling efficiencies to wine faults and so on and so on. And that just kind of brings us to the end here. I want to say thank you to our amazing panelists for sharing your honest stories and your insights, and to all of you to joining us today. Thank you to Wine Industry Network for having us. And I hope that you all feel a little more inspired, connected, and ready to take that next step, whatever that is. Also, follow us on LinkedIn. Let's connect. I know we just talked through that. So you can follow up with any of us after the session there, and we're happy to support you. Thanks again.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye.